the Most High made, let's go to the 2/3, 3/3. 2/3, 1/3, I should have said. Yes, Zechariah. So let's read Zechariah, and let's get.
It's 13:7.
Yeah.
Or 13.
Yeah, go ahead.
Zechariah chapter 13, verse 7. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd.
Against my shepherd, go on.
And against the man that is my fellow, saith Yahweh of hosts.
Read.
Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered.
Go on.
And I will turn mine hand upon the little ones.
Upon who?
Upon the little ones.
Upon the little ones, go on.
And it shall come to pass.
And it shall come to pass. Go on.
That in all the land, saith Yahweh, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die.
Now, what you've got to realize with this and understand is that 2 parts are going to be destroyed.
That's right.
Believe it or not, the 2 parts were made to be destroyed. There are some of us who are the children of Israel. Your whole purpose of being here is that the Most High is going to destroy you, because you were made evil and you will continue to be evil until he destroys you. That sounds real hard. Again, I'm not going to go too much into that, because obviously that's a whole lesson in and of itself. But I just want to make that point clear, because people think that if he's coming back for Israel, he's coming back for all of Israel. No, because there are 2 parts of our people who are just wicked, continuously wicked. And even when they try to stop being wicked, they go back and be wicked, because it's in their nature to be wicked, because the Most High made them that way. But then there are those who are the 1/3 that have been made to be his election. And watch what he says. He said he didn't lose one of them.
That's right.
Not one of them that the Father has given to him has he lost. Why? Because they know his voice. Hence the reason why when he went to meet Matthew or Peter and John, and he called them and said, come follow me. Notice, they left everything and followed him. They didn't even ask any questions. They just went. Because it's in their spirit to hear that voice and to follow it. Like some of you who are of the election. And how are we going to know that you continue to the end? You heard the word, and it worked in your spirit, and you couldn't leave it alone. Therefore, you followed, and you are who you are at this point. Come? All right, just finish that for me, please.
But the 3rd shall be left therein.
The 3rd shall be left there. Go to Romans 11 and 26.
The book of Romans, chapter 11 and verse 26.
Go ahead.
It reads, and so all Israel shall be saved.
All Israel shall be saved. Go on.
As it is written.
As it is written. It is documented that all of Israel is going to be saved. Read.
Come. There shall come out of Zion.
There shall come out of who?
Out of Zion.
Out of Israel. Go on.
The deliverer.
The deliverer. Go on.
And shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob.
He will turn it away from Jacob, from Israel. Read verse. All right, let's stop there. Now, let's go into a question that was asked. Let's go to 1 Corinthians. No, let's go to Matthew. Let's go to Matthew first. Matthew chapter 11, and let's go read verse 28. Matthew 11 and 28.
The book of Matthew, chapter 11 and verse 28.
Go on.
Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden.
Read.
And I will give you rest.
Read.
Take my yoke upon you.
Go on.
And learn of me.
Go on.
For I am meek and lowly.
I am what?
I am meek and lowly in heart. And ye shall find rest unto your souls.
Unto your souls. Go on.
For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
And my burden is light. Let's see if we can precept this in order to get some clearer understanding. Let's read it again, verse 28.
Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28. Come unto me, all ye that labor
And
and
stop. So all you that labor. When we labor, according to the scriptures, every time you come to a Sabbath, you are laboring.
Come.
Every time. Every time you do the work of the Most High God, you go to camp, you are laboring. Come? Because laboring is doing the things of the Most High God as opposed to doing the things that suit you. Now let's put a precept to that to make it even more crystal clear instead of giving it that version there. Let's go to Psalms 107 and verse 9. Psalms 107 and 9, please. Psalms 107 and 9.
The book of Psalm, chapter 107 and verse 9.
Read.
For he satisfies the long going, Salaki, for he satisfies the longing soul, and filleth the hungry soul with goodness.
With what?
With goodness.
Go on.
Such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being found, Salaki, being bound in affliction and iron.
So who was bound in affliction? You know, when you think about who do you know have sat in darkness? Israel. All right. Now, we have to be careful when we say that. And I don't mean it's not a trick question. Sat in darkness. Read it again, sir.
Psalm chapter 107 and verse 9. For he satisfieth the longing soul, and filleth the hungry soul with goodness.
We are the ones that have been the longing souls. We are the one that needed to have our hunger quenched. Now, to get an idea of that, you have to think back to when our people were made captive and chained up and were not given any food, and we had to wait until they fed us. We were waiting. Read it again.
Psalm chapter 107 and verse 9. It reads, For he satisfied the longing soul, and filleth the hungry soul with goodness.
With goodness. Because we were longing. When are we going to get something to eat? We were starving to the point that we were weak in our bodies.
That's right.
Because our enemy would not feed us. But then when we read the next verse, read, sir.
Such as sit in darkness.
And we sat in darkness. Where was that? When we were in the cargo belly of the ship, we sat in darkness, wondering, when are we going to come out of this? Remember, we were asking, when are we going to get food? Now, we're sitting in darkness. Can you imagine the despair? Can you imagine seated there, chained to your brother, chained to your sister, naked? And here's the thing, they weren't exactly going to release you so you could go to the bathroom. Everything had to be done there. It was humiliating. It was disgraceful. Our people went through that. Yes. And people are saying, well, there's no record. Well, the Most High God used a prophet to see the future and to document it. That's right. And he says, such as sat in darkness and
in the shadow of death.
And in the shadow of death, meaning that someone could die of malnutrition. Someone could die if they shouted out and said anything. Someone could come and bust their head open. So it tells us clearly in just those two verses, and we're not done yet. It said for such for he satisfies the longing soul and filleth the hunger soul with goodness. We were hungry. And then who such as sat in darkness and in the shadows of death. We have done that. Even to this very day, we're no longer in the belly of the ship. But guess what? If you have a son or a daughter and they leave, you pray for them because you're wishing for them to come home safely. Your husband leaves, you're hoping and praying that he'll come home safely. Or even your wife, because the enemy is no respecter of persons.
That's true.
And so it finishes, sir.
Being bound in affliction and iron.
So some of you are thinking, oh, well, that wasn't what David said. Well, he said affliction and iron. What is it then?
That's right.
making it very, very clear. That precept's out with, let's go back to Deuteronomy, and you know what I want.
Come, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Most High shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst.
And in what?
And in thirst.
And in thirst. In hunger and in thirst. Go on.
And in nakedness, and in want of all things.
And in want of all things. That's your precept that ties in with Psalms 107 and verse 10.
Come.
Now let's go back, sir. Let's read 11.
Psalm chapter 107, verse 11.
Read.
Because they rebelled against the words of Yahweh.
So when we rebel against the word of Yahweh, he puts us through the most drastic conditions. Because it's trying to shake you back into reality of knowing that you are the children of the Most High God.
That's
you
right.
don't act like the other nations.
Come.
I picked you from the beginning. I plucked you out from the other nations from the beginning. And I made you my firstborn. How are you now acting like them when I didn't make you like them?
That's right.
Because our people have a propensity of copying other nations. We become like them.
Come.
But let's prove that. Let's go to Proverbs. Let's prove this. Proverbs 1. Yeah, I think it is. Go to. Bear with me. Go to Proverbs. Or was it Ecclesiastes? I think it's Ecclesiastes I'm talking about. Bear with me. Bear with me. I'll get it. Okay. There we go. I want you to go back, if you please, to go back to Proverbs. Yeah. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 26. Salaki.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 12, verse 26. It reads, the righteous is more excellent than his neighbor.
See, the righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but watch this now, read.
But the way of the wicked seduceth them.
So we are seduced by the actions of the wicked. We want to be like them. Come on. All right, where were we, sir?
Back in Psalms.
Yes, let's go back there. Yeah, read verse 11 again, please.
Psalm chapter 107, verse 11.
Go on.
Because they rebelled against the words of Yahweh.
Go on.
And contemned the counsel of the Most High.
We became contemptuous. Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28. It's still coming back to Matthew. What did I say?
11.
Go ahead.
The book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
See, so it's telling us, come unto me, all ye that labor. You see, because they have rebelled against the word of the Lord and are contempt with the counsel of the Most High. Now it said, come unto me, all ye that labor. Labor how? Go back to Psalms, read verse 12. And then we'll go back and we'll read Matthew again.
Psalm chapter 107, verse 12, it reads, therefore he brought down their heart with labor.
So how he brought us back to crying to him was through heavy labor. So he says here, he said, therefore he brought down their hearts, their minds with labor. Go on.
They fell down, and there was none to help.
And there was none to help. Go back and read Matthew 11 and 28 for me, please.
Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden.
And are heavy laden. Go on.
And I will give you rest.
And I will give you rest. Go back to Psalms 107 and verse 12 again.
Psalm 107, verse 12. Therefore, he brought down their heart with labor.
With what?
With labor.
With labor. So, Lamentations 5 and 5. Please write these precepts down. Please make a note of them. You will not remember them if you try to commit them to memory.
The book of Lamentations, chapter 5 and verse 5. Our necks are under persecution. We labor.
We what?
We labor
Read.
and have no rest.
And have no rest.
Come.
But let's do one better. Jump back up to verse 2. Let's read down from there.
Lamentations chapter 5 verse 2. Our inheritance is turned to strangers.
So our inheritance has now gone to strangers. Our land is in the hands of strangers.
Come.
Our name is in the hands of strangers.
That's right.
Our worship and our traditions and our feasts are in the hands of strangers.
Come.
Read it again, please.
Our inheritance is turned to strangers.
Read.
Our houses to aliens.
To aliens. Read.
We are orphans.
We are what?
We are orphans.
We have become orphans. Why have we become orphans? Because we no longer have a father, because he removed himself from us.
Come.
Read.
And fatherless. Our mothers are as widows.
Read.
We have drunken our water for money.
So notice, we pay for water today. Can you believe that mess? Who would have thought it that you were going to pay for water? In fact, I shouldn't have said that. Years ago, I think I was 28 or whatever, I met someone in Youngstown, Ohio, and he was an Edomite. This is what this Edomite said to me. They said, listen, get into the water business now. So what are you talking about? He said, people are going to buy water. I said, people are never buying water. 28-year-old didn't know what he was talking about. And they said, listen, invest. If you invest now, you'll be rich by the time that you're 35. And by the time you're 40, you'll be a gazillionaire. I remember that as sure as I sit in this seat.
Wow.
And now I'm up there in age. I'm up there in age. And guess what? I see water being sold every week, every month. Who would have thought it?
Yeah, that's true.
Who would have believed? They're going to sell a bottle of water and we are going to buy it.
We say the same thing, yeah.
And they brainwash us in believing that the tap water is poisonous, it's contagious. You need water. Let's go back and read that verse again, please.
Come, Lamentations chapter 5 and verse 4. We have drunken our water for money.
For money, read.
Our wood is sold unto us.
And even wood that you would go to a tree, chop the thing down and take wood. Now you have to buy it. Buy the bag load. Read on, sir.
Our necks are under persecution.
Our necks are under persecution. Read.
We labor and have no rest.
And have no rest. Let's go back to Psalms 107, verse 12. Read.
Psalm chapter 107, verse 12. Therefore, he brought down their heart with labor. They fell down, and there was none to help.
And there was none to help. Where is the precept we go for that? Deuteronomy 28, 68.
Come. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. It reads, And Yahweh shall bring thee unto Egypt again with ships. Unto Egypt again with ships.
Read.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee.
Come.
So you see that the scriptures here, it's like the man of God, the prophet David, he saw this, and he saw the calamity of his people. But he recognized there's nothing he could do because they were so far spent in terms of their spiritual nature. They have sold it out. Let's go back. Let's go back to Matthew. Go back to Matthew. Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28. Let's read it again.
Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come unto me, all ye that labor.
Go on.
And are heavy laden.
And are heavy laden. Go on.
And I will give you rest.
And I will give you rest. Well, let's deal with the word heavy laden first, because think we need to understand. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 4 and 1, please. Isaiah chapter 4 and 1, I said. I meant Isaiah chapter 1 and 4.
Okay. The book of Isaiah, chapter 1 and verse 4. Ah, sinful nation.
A what?
A sinful nation.
A sinful nation. Now he's telling us outright blank that we are a sinful nation. Go on.
A people laden with iniquity.
A people what?
Laden with iniquity.
People laden with iniquity. Go on.
A seed of evildoers.
A seed of evildoers. Go on.
Children that are corrupters.
Children that are corrupters. That's what we are.
Come.
We're that bad. Name it and read it all over again, please.
Isaiah chapter 1 verse 4. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters.
Children that are what?
Are corrupters.
Read.
They have forsaken Yahweh. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel.
Before we go any further, let's look at that word, a people laden with sin or iniquity. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 8. For me, please. 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 4. 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 46.
Come. The book of 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 46. And if they sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not.
Go on.
And thou be angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captives into the land of the enemy.
Into what?
Into the land of the enemy.
Into the land of the enemy. Go on.
Far or near.
Far or near. Go on.
And if they shall bethink themselves.
If they what?
If they shall bethink themselves.
Read.
In the land whither they were carried captives.
Go on.
And repent. And make supplication unto thee.
Go on.
In the land of them that carried them captives.
Read.
Saying, we have sinned and have done perversely.
And that's what we have to do. We have to confess. Confess what we have done openly. And let the Most High then lead us into our restoration. Let's finish it, sir.
We have committed wickedness.
Go on.
And so return unto thee with all their heart.
Read.
And with all their soul.
Read.
In the land of their enemies.
In the land of their enemies. Go on.
Which led them away captive, and prayed unto thee toward their land.
Go on.
Which thou gavest unto their fathers.
Go on.
The city which thou hast chosen, and the house which I have built for thy name.
Which he has done what?
Built for thy name.
Built for our name. Go on.
Then hear thou their prayer.
Read.
And their supplication.
Read.
In heaven thy dwelling place. And maintain their cause.
And maintain what?
And maintain their cause.
Read.
And forgive thy people.
That's the key. We want him to forgive us.
Come.
And forgive thy people. Read.
That have sinned against thee.
Read.
In all their transgressions.
Go on.
Wherein they have transgressed against thee.
Read.
And give them compassion.
Read.
Before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them.
That they may have compassion on us. All right. Let's go back and let's finish what we were reading in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 4.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 1, in verse 4.
That explains why people were so laden with iniquity. Come.
Come.
Go on.
Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers,
Go on.
children that are corrupters. They have forsaken Yahweh. Salaki, they have provoked the Holy One of Israel.
Read.
Unto anger. They are gone away backward.
We've gone backwards. Hence the term backsliding. Okay. All right. Let's go back to where were we? Let's go back to Matthew.
Hosea says all that all day long.
God, backsliding Israel.
Come. The book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28.
Let's still stick with 28 for a minute.
Come. Matthew chapter 11 and verse 28. It reads, Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
I will give you rest. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 14, begin at verse 1. Again, it's another go-to scripture that we use. Begin at verse 1, yes, sir.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 14 and verse 1. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob.
You know what?
Will have mercy on Jacob.
Go on.
And will yet choose Israel.
Will yet choose Israel. Go on.
And set them in their own land.
Read.
And the strangers shall be joined with them.
Go on.
And they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
Now remember, the word stranger here is a double entendre. It has two meanings. And in other words, there are two ways of viewing this. Come on. You will find, for those of you in the original transcript, when you read this, verse 22 should run into should run into chapter 14 and verse 1. So verse 1 there should be verse 23. See that? It should be verse 23 of chapter 13. But you must remember, please do remember this, that chapters and verse was not in the original transcript. That is what men had put in. So every now and then you'll find that they have made an error in putting a stop or a comma or where a chapter or a verse should end or begin. Come on? If you don't believe me, just to prove that point real quick, just read chapter 13 and verse 22 and read right into chapter 14 and verse 1 and you'll see how it reads. Go
yes,
ahead.
sir. Isaiah chapter 13 verse 22. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces, and her time is near to come.
Now remember, when speaking about dragons, we know that dragons don't have palaces, so it's speaking about people.
Come.
Right? But continue, read.
And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged.
Read.
For the Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob.
See that? Go on.
And will yet choose Israel.
Go on.
And set them in their own land.
Read.
And the strangers shall be joined with them.
Shall be joined with them. Go on.
And they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
To the house of Jacob. So that's one view in terms of understanding the word stranger there, because the word stranger here is dealing with the word Gershon. Right? It's dealing with the word Gershon. Okay? And Gershon is the name of Moses' eldest son. You see? So speaking about those who are strangers of Israel, who are Israel but were made strangers because they came from mixed race or mixed lineage. That's how all that came about. But the entendre also deals with the fact that you could read it dealing with those who are of the other nations as slaves, and they are now going to be made workmen and workwomen for Israel. So I needed to understand that, because some of you will say, no, that's not what it means. Look, if you're not scholarly, you won't get it. If you're scholarly, you will get it. And I don't really want to debate that right now. I just really want you to understand how it's been formulated. So now that we understand that, we're going to read on, because that's not the exercise of the lesson right now. We want to get to verse 3. Read verse 2, please.
Verse 2. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place.
Do what?
Bring them to their place.
Go on.
And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh.
In the land of Yahweh. Go on.
For servants and handmaids.
Go on.
And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were.
Read.
And they shall rule over their oppressors.
Go on.
And it shall come to pass.
Here it comes. Go on.
In the day that Yahweh shall give thee rest.
Shall give you what?
Rest.
Shall give you rest. When Yahweh is ready, he's going to give you rest.
Come.
Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light, to give you rest.
Come.
Finish it.
Yes, sir. And give Salaki, and give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to
We
serve.
were made to serve. See that? So that's dealing with the rest part. Any questions so far? Any questions? We good? We good? All right. Now, let's go back to Matthew chapter 11 and read now verse 29.
Matthew chapter 11, verse 29.
Let's read.
Take my yoke upon you
Here we go.
and learn of me.
And when you take his yoke upon you, the whole purpose of doing that is so that you can learn. Learn what? Learn to be strong. Learn to be in the word and learn the dark sayings that will help you when others don't get it.
Come.
When Esau reads this book and he doesn't get it, guess what? You get it.
That's
Come?
Come.
So, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Let's deal with that. Go to John chapter 14. John chapter 14, verse 13.
Come.
Yes, I don't know. I think it's 13 or 15, but let me just quickly look there. Go there anyway. Read what you got.
The book of John, chapter 14 and verse 13.
And verse 1?
And verse 13.
Go on.
And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name,
Go on.
that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son.
Go on.
If ye shall ask anything in my name,
In what?
in my name,
In my name. Go on.
I will do it.
I will do it. Now, here is the key. Verse 15. Read.
If ye love me,
If you do what?
if ye love me,
Go on.
keep my commandments.
So keeping the commandments is that which helps your yoke to be easy.
That's right.
That's why it says, take my yoke upon you. Take this word. Take the commandments. Read it. Read 15 and let's stop. Let's go all the way through. Let's stop at 17.
John chapter 14, verse 15. If ye love me, keep my commandments.
Go on.
And I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter.
He will give you what?
Another comforter,
Give you another comforter. Go on.
that he may abide with you forever.
For what?
Forever.
Forever. Come on. Go on.
Even the Spirit of
The
truth,
Spirit of truth. Go on.
whom the world cannot receive.
Now the Spirit of truth is whom? Spirit of truth is Yahweh Shai.
Come.
Right? He's Yahweh Shai. He's the Spirit of truth. Come. All right, let's read.
Whom the world cannot receive,
See, so the
because
world can't receive Yahweh Shai. They can't receive him. But they don't know who he is. And they've been taught that he is this blonde-haired, blue-eyed man.
come.
And that's not the Spirit of truth.
Nope.
That's the spirit of a lie.
That's a good cut right there. Come.
That's a lie because Yahweh Shai is not blonde-haired and blue-eyed. So that's a lie.
That's right.
Huh? Go ahead, sir.
Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him, but ye know him.
But you know him.
For he dwelleth in
He
you,
does what?
dwelleth in you,
Go on.
and shall be in you.
All right, so we can stop there for time's sake. Let's go back. Let's go back to Matthew. Let's just read a little bit more. All right, finish verse 29. Read it again. Go through.
Matthew chapter 11, verse 29. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me,
Go on.
for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your soul.
Unto your soul. Okay, well, now there's a whole lot we can go to there, but I have to be mindful of time, and there's another question that I want to answer before we're through. So let's read verse 30, sir.
Verse 30. For my yoke is easy,
Here it is.
and my burden is light.
And my burden is light. This is the area that causes confusion, because back when we were in the Christian church, they were saying, you're going to take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And then, all right, I have to quit that because I sound like I'm mocking. I'm really not. I'm only sharing my experience. We've all experienced it. But there's something about when the scales from your eyes have fallen, and now. All right, so okay. All right, let's go. Let's read Matthew chapter 4 and 15, please. Let's deal with that.
Book of Matthew chapter 4. What verse? 15?
Verse 15, yeah.
So like Matthew chapter 4 and verse 15, it reads, the land of Zebulun.
The land of what?
The land of Zebulun.
The land of Zebulun, go on.
And the land of Naphtali.
And the land of Naphtali, go on.
By the way of the sea.
By the way of the sea, go
beyond
on.
Jordan.
Beyond Jordan.
Galilee of the Gentiles.
Galilee of the Gentiles. Now, if we were to ask that question, why is this so important? Can anyone tell me? For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. What are we kind of?
That is talking about the northern kingdom, is it right there? It's talking about the northern
kingdom. Yes, it's speaking about the northern kingdom, yes, sir. All right, let's read it again. Read, in fact, from verse 12. Come on now, give more context to those who are not familiar with it.
Come, Matthew chapter 4 and verse 12. Now, when Yahushua had heard that John was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee. And leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the sea coast, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali.
So, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali. So, they were there. Some of them were still there. From the northern kingdom.
Come.
Go on.
That it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles.
Galilee of the Gentiles. We get understanding from that from Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 10. Let's go there quickly. Let's go there real quick, please. I've got to be careful because I'm feeling drawn into it, doing a lot more explaining. But anyway, go ahead, sir.
Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 10.
Go on.
And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people.
Go on.
To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious.
And his rest, what?
Shall be glorious.
Shall be glorious.
Go on. And it shall come to pass.
Stop at 12. Go on.
In that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people.
Go on.
Which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea.
From the islands of the sea.
Verse 12.
Yep.
And it shall, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel.
The outcasts of Israel, those that were left, those that were scattered. Go on.
And gather together the dispersed of Judah.
These are the diasporas of Judah. Go on.
From the four corners of the earth.
Go on.
That's verse 13.
All right, very good. All right, so he says he's going to take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's going to make everything that appears to be difficult and hard now to be easy. Let's conclude that, please, with Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49 and begin at verse 6.
Come, Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob.
Say that again.
And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel.
See? So we've been preserved. That's why certain um, uh, uh, certain small groups of us from the northern kingdom was still in Jerusalem at the time, in their part of their land. But go on.
Come, I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles.
So we're going to use you as a light to the Gentiles. Who are the Gentiles? The Gentiles it's speaking about are the Israelites who have been operating like Gentiles. We read that earlier in Matthew chapter 4 and verse 15.
12, 15.
All right, so let's read that again.
Matthew?
No, back in Isaiah, let's read the latter clause, which is, I will also give thee for light.
Come, I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles.
To the Gentiles, go on.
That thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth.
Read on.
Thus saith Yahweh, the Redeemer of Israel,
The bringer back of Israel, go on.
and his Holy One,
Go on.
to him whom man despiseth,
Read.
to him whom the nation abhorreth, to a servant of rulers. Kings shall see and arise.
Go on.
Princes also shall worship, because of Yahweh that is faithful,
Go on.
and the Holy One of
And
Israel,
the Holy One of Israel,
and he shall choose thee.
and he shall choose us. Come on.
Come.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, now the last thing that we're going to do, is the last thing we're going to do. Yes. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Let's just cover that. I dealt with that today, earlier. Let me just cover it again real quick. And hopefully we'll make short. Yeah, begin at verse 1.
The book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 13, verse 1.
Now the question here, if there was a title given to this little lesson I'm going to do in this little section here, would be where, why, how. All right? Where, why, and how. Okay? Now let's read it, and then we'll see how the where, why, and how makes sense.
1 Corinthians, chapter 13, verse 1. Though I speak with the tongues of men
Go on.
and of angels,
Go on.
and have not charity, I am become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal.
Tinkling symbol. Now, the first thing we have to analyze with this is that it says, though I speak with the tongues of men. Now, if I was to answer generally speaking, what would people say? Not yourself. What would that mean? Can anyone tell me? It says, though I speak with the tongues of men. What does that mean, the tongues of men? Tongues of men. Not hard. Go ahead.
Different dialects and different languages all over the world.
Well, with the tongues of men would be, what is the language that is most common throughout the earth presently?
English.
English. So that is considered to be the common tongue. Now, in Yahweh's days, back in Corinthians, that common tongue would have been what? Greek. Because Greek was the common tongue then, because the Greeks were in rulership at one point. But then came another group of people who took over from the Greeks. And who were they who took over from the Greeks? Because they were the ones who eventually had Yahweh crucified. Right. So who was that? Adrian, why don't you tell me? The Romans. So the Romans are the common tongue of that day. But you see two sections of it. Because one section we saw, which was going back to Daniel, which is dealing with the Greeks. And then we're looking at what's happening now. Because remember, Yahweh chose a particular time to be born and come into this world. And he came in under Roman rule. The common tongue at that point was the Roman tongue, which at the time is called Latin. Now, in our day, same scripture dealing with us right now. What is the common tongue today? It is English. Con? They are the ones who rule the world, and anywhere you go, most people speak English. Con? So now that we understand that, let's read on.
1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 2. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand...
No, go back. Read verse 1 again.
1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. Though I speak with the tongues of men, and of angels.
What does it mean, speak with the tongues of angels? 95% of the time, most of our people, especially in Christianity, do not know what that means. 95, that's a high percentage you're moving up there. Well, because it's true. Unless you have studied this, you will not know it. Guaranteed. Anyone? Go ahead.
Would it be in Revelation 2 and 1, the pastors?
No, the pastors who are the angels of the church, of Laodicea, etc., and Philadelphia. No, that's not what it's speaking about in this case. It says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels. All right, now, to bring understanding, then, could go to Genesis chapter 11, begin at verse 1. Genesis chapter 11 and verse 1. Let's read.
The book of Genesis, chapter 11 and verse 1. And the whole earth was of one language.
See, the whole earth at that time, all spoke Hebrew. Everyone spoke Hebrew. Genesis chapter 11 and verse 1. The whole earth spoke with one language and of one speech. Continue, sir.
And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar.
Go on.
And they dwelt there.
Go on.
And they said one to another, Go tell, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly.
Go on.
Come. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar.
Go on.
And they said, Go to, let us build us a city.
Go on.
And a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name.
This is primarily dealing with Ham. Now, how do we know that? Let's just flick back to chapter 10. Chapter 10 shows us that if you read chapter 10, verse 6, Ham was the first ruling nation. And then if you jump down to verse 10, read what it says there.
Genesis chapter 10, verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel.
Was Babel. Later called Babylon.
Come.
But go on.
And Eric, and Akkad, and Calneh.
Now, Babel, by the way, today is called modern day Iraq. All right? So, go on.
In the land of Shinar.
In the land of Shinar. See that? So when we go back now, and remember, the Ham is from verse 6 through verse 20 there. Because in verse 20 it says, so these are the sons of Ham after their families and after their tongue in the what? In their what? In their what? Verse 20.
Come, verse 20. In their nations.
In their countries and in their nations.
Come.
All right. So when we go back now, we read in verse 2 where it said that, and I'm reading the latter clause of verse 2, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar.
Come.
And we just read that over in chapter 10 and verse 10. See, in the latter clause. So I'm doing that so you can see that it correlates and the timeline all works together there. So we know that we're dealing with Ham. So, who said this Ham? Well, you just read it. Mm-hmm. Just read it. Makes it very, very clear there. So we're dealing with Ham primarily. So now, let's read verse 6.
Genesis chapter 11 and verse 6.
Go on.
And Yahweh said, Behold, the people is one,
Meaning that they were united in this scheme. Go on.
and they have all one language.
And they all have one language, meaning the language that they have was the language that gives them the ability to communicate. Go on.
And this they begin to do.
Go on.
And now nothing will be restrained from them,
Nothing will be restrained from them. Go on.
which they have imagined to do.
Which they have imagined to do. Go on.
Go to, let us go down.
Hold it. So now it says, let us, let the Elohims, let the angel and those who were in the beginning of the election, let them go down. Go
And
on.
there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech.
One another's speech. So, what happened in verse 7? Can someone tell me? It's clearly written there. Not you, sir. They already know you know because you were with me this afternoon. You just trying to show off, brother.
God forgive you.
Because I already teased you. Can anyone? Can you? Huh? Yes, but what is it telling us? You're right, but what is it telling us? All right, go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 1. Read what it says.
1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels.
And of what?
And of angels.
And of angels. Drop it. Go back to Genesis chapter 11 and 7. Read.
Genesis 11, verse 7. Go to, let us go down, and there confound.
So Yahweh came down with his angels and
confound their language.
so Yahweh came down, he and his angels, and what?
Confound their language.
So the angels are the ones responsible for confounding the language. And they confound their language, read,
that they may not understand one another's speech.
That's why in the history, look, even when you look at many of the African nations, all their tongues were confounded by the angels. All the nations, their tongue was confounded by the nations. The only one that kept their tongue out of the sons of Noah was Shem. All of the others, they were confounded. Now, a person would turn around and say, well, but so they tell me that Chinese and all tongues came out from the angels. That's why Moab speaks the way he speaks. Ammon speaks the way that he speaks. Those from the Germans speak the way that they speak, as well as the French and so on. All their languages were confounded and they were confused by the angel. The angel gave them their tongues. The angels gave them their tongues to confuse them. And if they confuse them with the tongues, they're the ones that also can communicate with them.
Yes.
So that's where that comes from. Do you understand so far? And then after they confuse their tongues and not understanding one another's speech, verse 8 says what?
So Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth.
So when they were scattered, everyone looked for someone who spoke their language and went with them. So their languages dictated who they moved with. Go on.
And they left off to build the city.
Go on.
Therefore, is the time, Salaki, is the name of it called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth.
That Babel is where we get the word Babylon from. Read again.
Therefore, is the name of it called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth.
Read.
And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
On the face of all the earth. Con? Does that make sense to you so far? Right, so if you were to jump down, go back to chapter 10 and verse 25, just to prove a point here, in case anyone is being misled.
Genesis chapter 10, verse 25.
Begin at verse 24.
Verse 24. And Arphaxad begat Selah, and Selah begat Eber.
Now, Eber is where the Hebrew language continued through, because the word Eber means from the past.
Come.
You see? Go on.
And unto Eber were born two sons.
Go on.
The name of one was Peleg.
Now, Peleg is important because it's from Peleg, because his name means division.
Come.
He caused the division among them, hence the splitting up.
Come.
Because remember, all our names dictated what we ended up doing. Come? So when we go back, did we finish verse 9?
No, sir. Well, yes, sir, we did.
We did, all right. Read verse 10.
Genesis chapter 11 and verse 10. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood.
Go on.
And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years.
Jump down to 14.
Verse 14. And Selah lived 30 years and begat Eber.
Eber. So that his name means from the past. So the language continued from the past. Paleo-Hebrew. Go on. All right. Time is now well spent. So I wanted to go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and finish 1 and 2. But time won't allow us. But I hope that this has been instructive and informative to us. I pray that you continue to listen to get further understanding from the teaching. Captain, why don't you take us out?
Come. I want to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Hashem, Mashach Yahushai. Also, I want to give a shout out to the brothers that are here and far and near. Officer Rabba out in Dallas, Texas. Also, Rashawn out in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. Also, Brother Azariah in London, UK. And Dominic Blackfield in Sherfield, UK. And also those Aquas and Akim out there, please look these people up on our YouTube page, right? And also on our Facebook page. So like, share, and subscribe. And also, we love the fact that you guys are giving alms to help this truth come out. Please continue to do so for the Most High. Okay? So we give our honor and glory to Yahweh, Lashem Mashiach Yahushai. Say to the people, say love.
Say love.
All praise to the Most High.
All right. So